I'm actually working on some floating shelves right now, so I figured it might be a good time to do a quick video and show you kind of my process on how I'm doing it. There's a lot of different ways to do floating shelves. This is one of the many, so I'm just gonna give you a quick breakdown. So what I'm doing is I'm setting these before we do the drywall so that I can mount them into the studs like this. I had these custom fabricated by a local fabrication shop, Warren Welding. They do an awesome job, really quick turnaround. But this is just 1/4 inch steel and 1/4 inch steel here with 5/16 holes drilled, and that way we can mount it straight to the stud, and then you can set your shelf right on top of that. So all you really see is this down below. You can do this also with dowels if you don't want to see it at all. I'll do a 3/4 inch steel dowel, and then I'll drill a hole in the back of my shelf and I'll glue it on. And that way you won't see the bracket at all. But for this method, this is a lot easier to get it perfect and level. And it's nice to set the shelf on after the fact. I prefer this method to the dowels. I did use layout for one of the studs, but what I did was I started with that bracket, which was already existing, and then I added a stud over here so it had the same spacing off the wall. And then I used that stud because I wanted to try and find something balanced, splitting the space as evenly as possible and closest to center. So I used that and then measured the distance between that one and matched that coming from here to that one, so that it all is going to look good and look symmetrical when the shelf goes up. If that doesn't bother you too much, you're not really going to be able to see those because they are hidden brackets essentially. You'll see the top shelf, but if it doesn't bother you and you just want to go off layout, you can certainly do that as well and get them spaced as close as you can. This is just something I'm a little OCD, so I prefer to have that exactly set and spaced evenly. So here's a bracket, an example of setting it. I've got one screw in there, and you can see my line's a little off, so now I can adjust it. You can see my hand on the laser. Whoop, there we go. And just up a tiny bit, so I can see a little bit of a glow on my edge. But see, you can really fine tune that and get it exactly where you want, which is nice about these screws because they're a little smaller than the holes too. Because once you put those lags in there, they take up the full space and you can't really move it. So it's really nice to have it there and set before you screw it in with lags. So I've got that where I want it. Got my T25. Don't use Phillips screws. I hate Phillips screws. I don't know why they still make them. But these also have that little self-drilling tip on them, so they almost never split the wood and they'll always come back out. They're harder to strip. These are great screws. Don't ever use Phillips again. So there you go. I'll set that in there, set my 2 lag screws, and then pull these out and put in the rest of my lag screws. So what I did was I set my laser here, and this is the way a lot of people use tripods and such. I just screw 2 pieces of wood together and in an L shape, and then that way I can just move it right to where I need it. You know, I'll make a little, as I did here, you know, I'll do my little crow's foot, and then I can just move my laser up until it's right where I need it and then screw it in. And the reason I use 1 screw in the center instead of 2 is because if it's just a little off from your crow's foot, then you can take that off. And you can tap this up at an angle because it's a self-leveling laser. It can take, it's starting to beep. So it can go at a little bit of an incline and still be able to self-level. So what that allows me to do is move it up and down right until, so say if I'm here, it lets me move up by just small increments or down by small increments. So you can really get it precise using this, and that's kind of a nice hack on using a laser level without a tripod. So I've got these lag screws here. These are just 1.5 inch lag screws, 5/16 with washer on them. And to pre-drill them and to set my pilot bit, I actually just use these T25 Torx 1.5 inch screws, and that way I can just hold my bracket in place, move it up and down until it's right on my laser line, and then I can put in the screws, and that does a preliminary set for me. And then also at the same time, creates a pilot hole for my lag screws. So you're kind of killing two birds with one stone, and you can get it real precise doing it that way. So what I'll do is I'll leave 2 screws in the back, and then I'll come in here. I've got my impact gun. You can always use a ratchet. So this is a real easy way to do it. So I've already got that set, and I put 2 in. So now I've got my drill. Okay. So it's not going to go anywhere because I already got those set. Screw in a washer. Or a lag screw in a washer. A little harder to get here on the back side. Over here, I had to do screws on the back, and I don't think I can get the impact in there, so I'm just going to leave those screws. It's definitely strong enough. I mean, right now, this is over-engineered for a shelf that's going to be holding dishes, but it's better to over-engineer than under. See, that was super easy, way faster than using a ratchet. Of course, I'm guessing you probably don't have an impact gun or want to spend the money on something like that, so it might take a little more time, but you'll get it done all the same. And there we go. It's still perfectly level on here. So that's a good way just to set your brackets and get them ready before you put on your drywall. You want to have your tiles picked out before you set these, because that way you can measure from the floor to what your finished countertop height's going to be, which I marked here, and then you go from your finished countertop height, however many tiles you're going to go up. If you're going up all the way, you want to count how many tiles are going up and have even spacing, accounting for grout lines, so that when you hit your shelf, you're not going to have to cut a tile. It'll fit up a full piece, and you're not going to have any weird, ugly lines. We'll set our countertop with a laser too. So I definitely recommend using a laser level for this. You can use a regular level. You're not going to get it as perfect. A laser level is definitely the way to go when you're setting like floating brackets or anything. And then that way I know my tiles are going to come right to here. And then I counted for, we're using rough cut, true 2-inch reclaimed lumber for our shelves. So it's going to be 2 inches, and then my tiles are 2.5. So that allows 3 rows of tiles, maybe it was 4 here, between these shelves, so that I'm going to have perfectly sized spacing in between. That's definitely something you want to consider when building these shelves. But thanks for tuning in. If you got any questions, I'll try and answer them in the comments. All right, thanks for tuning in.